There are limits to the trauma that a human being can endure before they have to take to the streets and start screaming. That is the bitter monologue of Mrs. Jasmine, a woman who once stood at the pinnacle of wealth and power, now left with nothing but confusion and loneliness in Woody Allen's Blue Jasmine. Once a symbol of perfection in high society, Jasmine suddenly loses everything after her husband is arrested for financial fraud. From a luxurious mansion, she must move into her sister's cramped apartment in San Francisco and start everything over. Jasmine is forced to face the question: if we lose everything that once defined who we are, how must we continue to live? Blue Jasmine is for all those who are struggling on the journey of adulthood, forced to face reality and their own limits while clinging to dreams that lie out of reach. People often say that when you hit rock bottom, the only way is up. But what happens if the person falling still tries to believe they never fell at all? The path to reclaiming past glory is certainly not smooth, and how will Jasmine's journey unfold? Let's explore it with P-Fim right now. In cinema, a character discarding their birth name or adopting a new identity is often a symbolic act of resisting fate, an effort to rewrite their own life. Just as the poor boy James Gatz reinvented himself as the elegant tycoon Jay Gatsby, organizing lavish parties to erase the stigma of an impoverished past. Or the student Christine McPherson, who gave herself the name Ladybird as an assertion of her own identity during a turbulent period of growing up. A new name helps characters provide themselves with the motivation to escape a mundane, mediocre life. And Jasmine is the same. She was consciously aware that the name Janet sounded neither memorable nor as sophisticated as the origins she desired. Originally an orphan, Janet was lucky enough to be adopted by a kind couple. She was adored and somewhat favored over her sister Ginger by their adoptive mother due to her pretty appearance. From a young age, Janet dreamed of becoming an important person throughout her life. She enrolled in anthropology at Boston University, where she met and socialized with friends from wealthy families. From that platform, Janet had the opportunity to meet Hal Francis, a charismatic businessman, and quickly fell in love with him. Jeanette decided to change her name to Jasmine and dropped out in her final year of university to marry Hal. In her 20s, she was happy to find both love and material security in Hal. Hal was the ticket that took Janet away from her old status by bringing her a life beyond expectations. Her main job was organizing parties for New York's elite, maintaining business relationships for her husband, and running the charitable organization managed by Hal. To society, Hal was a successful, kind businessman alongside his beautiful wife Jasmine, who possessed impeccable fashion taste. She loved Hal and loved the life he created for her, where Jasmine felt she had a perfect family. Until one day, that world collapsed in the blink of an eye, when Hal was arrested by the FBI in the middle of the street for financial fraud, then committed suicide in prison, leaving behind an unfillable void. Because of her absolute trust in her husband, Jasmine had signed a series of illegal contracts and became an unwitting accomplice. Although she was lucky enough not to face a sentence, all of Jasmine's assets were seized, her relationships lost, and her reputation shattered. For several years after, Jasmine lived scrapingly by selling what remained of her jewelry until everything finally ran out. With nowhere left to go, she was forced to leave New York, the symbol of the glamorous world that once belonged to her, to live with her adoptive sister Ginger, the only person to open her arms to welcome her after her fall from grace. Like a delusive dream abruptly interrupted, Jasmine returns to being Janet, the true person she had tried to forget for so long. The conflict between illusion and reality has always been the origin of tragedy in many cinematic works. When humans cannot accept their position in the real world, they often seek out illusion as a temporary shelter for the subconscious. That delusion causes the mind to create a substitute image to cling to, and if they are not sober enough to balance it, they will become victims of the very dream they created. Blue Jasmine opens when everything has already collapsed. Jasmine arrives in San Francisco empty-handed, living off her sister's place, but that is only the tip of a tragedy that had been sown long ago. Jasmine had placed all her faith in Hal. The fact that Jasmine repeatedly retells the story of her and Hal's first meeting at a vineyard party to the music of Blue Moon is a detail that shows the romance and the obsession in Jasmine's thoughts about their relationship. To Jasmine, that moment was the starting point of all the happy days she had imagined. Blue Moon becomes the melody that leads Jasmine's mind back into a loop of nostalgia. Yet it is hard to blame Jasmine, because Hal was a venture capitalist with great persuasive talent, knowing how to create an image and making everyone, including his wife, believe in the aura and the promises of wealth he could bring. The film does not tell of a sudden fall, but of a long journey of a woman losing herself in the indulgence of power and materialism. Therefore, when that world collapses, Jasmine's panic stems largely from the fact that she no longer knows who she is if she is not the wife of Hal Francis. In the work, The Only Living Boy in New York, there is a memorable line that the greatest distance in this world is the distance between the reality of life and our fantasies. What we want and the way things happen are often not as smooth as expected. Jasmine's tragedy is not being mature and brave enough to look directly at the harshness of reality, which is also the cause that made her lose everything. When telling of the past, Jasmine's eyes brighten and her voice is full of confidence. But only a moment later, when returning to her senses, she trembles on the verge of tears, her hands fumbling for a bottle of alcohol and Xanax to try and forget the reality. The scenes of the past and the present throughout the film are covered in a warm, brilliant golden hue, making it hard for us to distinguish them if not for the appearance of Hal representing the past and Ginger as the present. All of this aims to show the chaos in Jasmine's mind as she stubbornly immerses herself in vain thoughts. Jasmine still has a fragile belief left that this slide is only temporary and that she will eventually return to her affluent life as before. Even though she constantly tells Ginger she is broke, she still buys first-class plane tickets and tips taxi drivers generously. That is the only way for her to believe she is still the Jasmine of the past. Those spending gestures are evidence of the fact that she cannot escape the past, where money was once the only measure of self-worth. The structure interlacing the past with the present helps the viewer clearly feel not only the material losses, but also the shattering within Jasmine herself, as she gradually loses her sense of self, no longer distinguishing what is reality. Perhaps because of that, Jasmine's catchphrase is always, "Where am I? What am I doing with my life?" Jasmine is completely out of place when interacting with Ginger's friends, who are simple, rough working-class people, who do not hesitate to say hurtful truths about her situation. Every time Jasmine tries to remember her life before, she is immediately pulled back to a hot, stifling kitchen, amidst the loud TV noise and screaming children. By day, Jasmine works as a dental clinic assistant to temporarily cover living expenses. By night, she nurtures the determination to study computers to become an interior designer. However, the current situation has many factors that make those delusions of Jasmine unlikely to come true. Her easy life before makes it hard for Jasmine to endure the hardship of both studying and working. Dreaming is easy, but doing is hard. She quickly discards the intention to continue studying and chooses the path where she had once succeeded, which is searching for a wealthy man to marry. Even though things have changed, Jasmine still hopes her life will be glorious again. The problem only lies in finding the right potential candidate. And then that day finally arrives. At a party, Jasmine meets Dwight, a politician who recently lost his wife. Of course, Jasmine lies about her entire life. She describes herself as a talented interior designer, undergoing the shock of losing her husband, who was a famous surgeon lost to a sudden illness. Jasmine knows she is lying, but she cannot stop. Clinging to the bottom of illusion helps Jasmine protect herself from the reality she cannot accept. Her attitude is a mirror reflecting the weakness when humans choose to run away from the truth instead of stepping through it. Thinking her life had turned a page, but when preparing to go buy a wedding ring, Jasmine and her fiancé happen to meet Ginger's ex-husband, the man who was once cheated out of $200,000 by Hal. He is just one of hundreds out there who know the true story about Jasmine. The needle in the bag will one day come out, and Jasmine, sooner or later, will have to face her terrible past. No longer the elegant, charming woman, Jasmine screams justifications at Dwight, yet she cannot save the situation. How many of us, just like Jasmine, live in falsehood to avoid having to face the fear within ourselves? People often say the quarter-life crisis is terrifying, but a midlife crisis is even more terrifying for those who have no accumulation of resilience and life experience. Psychological studies reveal a truth that the older we get, the more burdens life adds, and our souls become more vulnerable and weak. What helps us be more resilient is financial security and stable relationships. Hal's stepson has built a new life for himself from scratch, got married, and opened a musical instrument shop in a small alley. When meeting him again, Jasmine thinks she has failed by compromising with a working-class life instead of becoming someone great as she desired. During the most difficult periods, humans often have a tendency to look back at the past, clutching onto glorious memories, as if just by believing in them, we can continue to live. However, the past is not as perfect as the way we remember it, but is kept by the mind in the most beautiful fragments to soothe the present. In many literary and cinematic works, we have the main character as an unreliable narrator. Because of psychological disorders or delusions, they will intentionally distort the truth, making the story told not fully reflect reality. At that time, the viewer does not just follow a series of events, but must grope between jumbled, skeptical memory fragments to find what is real and what is a product of the character's mind. Jasmine does not intentionally lie to others, but deceives herself in a mess of beautiful memories. The truth about her is only revealed through the accounts of outsiders like Ginger. Jasmine's marriage was not that perfect, and she was not entirely the naive woman cheated by her husband. Throughout the film, Jasmine always blames others. She blames Hal for betraying her, and the world for being unfair. But the person she avoids most is herself. She cannot admit that she herself facilitated her husband's lies, turning a blind eye to the times he had affairs with young girls or did business illegally to continue being the pampered wife. In a rare moment of clarity for Jasmine, after being told bitter words by her stepson, we finally know that before the storm hit, Hal had openly wanted a divorce to live with a mistress the age of his son. Jasmine panicked because everything had gone out of control. And then it was she herself, in a fit of despair and jealousy for being abandoned, who called to report Hal's financial fraud to the FBI. A crazy action that led to the complete collapse of both. On the surface, it seemed to be the angry reaction of a betrayed wife, but deeper down, it was the disappointment of no longer being loved, which was also a fatal weakness for a woman who was once an orphan. If Jasmine completely knew nothing about her husband's illegal business, she would not have been capable of reporting him to be arrested right after one phone call. From that fateful day, the consequences unfolded like a nightmare with no end. Hal was arrested, assets were seized, and Jasmine collapsed to the point of abusing alcohol and medicine, mentally unstable, sliding gradually into the boundary between sanity and madness. Jasmine tried to step out of the circle of lies that had dominated her life, but was not strong enough to live in the naked truth afterward. Hal, after discovering that the person behind everything was his beloved wife, indignantly ended his own life with a piece of rope. Jasmine personally lost her love and her family. The high price of it drove her mad. In another aspect, Blue Jasmine is a series of prolonged failures of a person who dares not face themselves, having every illusion stripped away until there is nothing left to hide. Hidden behind Jasmine's personal story is a broader picture of American society after the 2008 financial crisis, a period when faith in status and the American dream was deeply shaken. Blue Jasmine does not just tell of the collapse of a woman, but also serves as a metaphor for the disillusionment of the upper class, those who had lived too long in the illusion of success and power. Luxurious New York and bustling San Francisco are two completely different value systems. If Jasmine's old life was a world where humans seemingly never had to do anything besides spend money and praise each other, Ginger's small apartment is always cramped, messy, and filled with the laughter of the guy Chili, his friends, and their generosity. Those things that Jasmine considers mediocre are actually the real life for the majority of humanity. When the play lowers its curtain, Ginger is still happier than Jasmine, because she has a man willing to go to the end of the earth for her, always tolerant and loving her unconditionally. That is what Jasmine, until this moment, is still trying to find. Sophistication cannot hide loneliness, and status cannot replace the true value of a human being. Splendor is but a dream. In a moment, it turns to naught. The final scene of Blue Jasmine is one of the saddest endings in Woody Allen's career, when Jasmine sits on a park bench like a woman who has lost her mind, talking to herself, with hair still wet, a haggard face, and an outfit not even fully buttoned. After all the delusions, lies, and running away, Jasmine is completely lost. Woody Allen does not give her another chance for atonement or mending, because every action has a consequence, and humans cannot escape the price they caused. Jasmine once considered herself special, and everyone around her is just a backdrop for her life, only to be doused with a bucket of cold water by reality. As long as Jasmine has not yet soberly admitted she is Jeanette, and accepted starting over from the humblest position in society, she will continue to be lost. Woody Allen refused a happy ending. He let his character fall, pay the price, and be unable to rise. Throughout his career, Woody Allen has always been loyal to one consistent theme: humans and the illusions they create to soothe themselves before a dissatisfied reality. The stories in his works revolve around the obsession with regret, the fear of time, and the desire to live differently. Woody Allen once shared in an interview that if you ask anyone honest about their life, they will admit there are many decisions they wish they could have chosen differently. They wish they had bought or not bought that house, had married or not married that person. Just as he has countless regrets, and he never believes those who say they have no regrets in life. He does not believe that. That was the idea for him to make Blue Jasmine, the film that tells of a person living the rest of their life drenched in regret by deceiving themselves. Everyone has lied to others, and especially to themselves, to feel that life is easier, to soothe the feeling of regret, to believe they are still on the right track. Then one day, reality will quietly pull down the curtain of illusion, forcing us to look straight at our true selves. Blue Jasmine, though wearing the warm colors of a fairy tale dream, is a nightmare that no one can escape when having to face the truth about themselves. Blue Jasmine would not have such weight without the acting of Cate Blanchett. No longer having the splendor or authority as in other works, Blanchett brings a Jasmine full of fear, panic, and fragility, hidden under a noble appearance, as critic Brooks Handy of Vanity Fair observed. Blanchett's acting makes us feel the character is like a beautiful crystal vase, trying to keep itself from shattering when dropped on a cold tile floor. She makes the viewer empathize with a character who is both infuriating and pitiful, and as charming as she is impossible to look away from. With humorous satires, Blue Jasmine gradually becomes a mirror reflecting human pain. No matter how wealthy or powerful, we still carry within us loneliness that cannot be hidden. And if there is any lesson Blue Jasmine can bring to all of us, it would be the advice: lower the rose-colored lens to look at life with a more realistic eye. The video ends here. Please leave your thoughts in the comments section. For now, goodbye, and see you again.